what's happening with the managers out there?
See, leadership is all about well-being and is also about a duty of care. Doing a bucket load of stuff that's required for a match day preparation. This is with my day job. Your team is not happy, and that creates both internal and external stresses to a lot of people. Other than work, they must have a passion.
For people who are leading, for them also, it's very important to stay happy and sane.
You don't want to have your mind in an imbalanced state.
One, two, three, four.
Welcome to the debut of Yatri's conversation series. Thank you, Vijay, for agreeing to do the conversation with me. So today I am joined by Mr. Vijay Dwarakanath, a seasoned IT leader based in UK. Instead of diving into the conversation, I just want to share something with you, Vijay. We are losing a lot of money because of stress. According to a Gallup report, about 9.6 trillions dollars impacted because of stress, absentees, and a lot of other things. And if I talk about India alone, it is the number is about $14 billion of GDP, and similar numbers in Western countries. So I want to know from you what's happening with the managers out there.
Thank you, Neha. It's a real pleasure to be on your podcast and share my insights and thoughts and share my experiences so far in my corporate career as well as the stuff that we I do outside work, which we can delve into in a period of time.
Mhm.
Uh, Leadership is a very there are only three factors in my head, right? They're either overvalued, undervalued, or in my case, many a times it's underestimated, right? It's a massive thing that people need to give a lot of insights and thoughts. As you rightly said, there's a lot of airtime lost due to stress factors, right? There's a lot of reasons behind it. There's a lot of theories being written. There's been a lot of journals being written, white papers written. I mean, you go into Google and say, "Can I get a book on leadership?" People are confused, right?
Hmm.
What do I take? Everything seems nice, right? It's like sending a kid to a candy shop, right? Which one will he choose, right?
Yeah.
Probably you end up choosing the most colorful one that resonates with your eyes, and it means a lot more appealing. But there are different thoughts to leadership, both in the Western world as well as in Indian culture, right? We've all seen, right, what one bad leader can create havoc in an ecosystem. It's a massive issue, which should not be underestimated in my views, because uh, it's all about taking ownership, having the willfulness to accept issues, being available, right? Being a good listener. Some of these small traits which I'm talking about, right?
Mhm.
Which could end up at least you being in a position to take the right decisions for you and your team, right? I always feel leadership is all about well-being and is also about a duty of care, because you are not managing yourself, you're managing your team, and the welfare of your team and the ecosystem around the team uh, will go a long way in how flourished your team looks like and how productive they can end up being. Right? A lot of leaders want to micromanage because they feel micromanaging to the death will mean they can get more productivity. But actually, it stifles people, right? It doesn't allow them to be creative. It doesn't allow them to explore, right? Micromanagement, all it does is you kind of created a task-based ecosystem which you start tick boxing exercise. Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? But within that space, you haven't, as a leader, said, okay, where is the tolerance within this task for the guy to do some R&D?
Hmm.
Where within this task has he got some creativity? Where within this task is he bringing something new into the plate? So micromanagement ends up becoming stifled, that in the larger sense only means one thing, right? Your team is not happy, and that creates both internal and external stresses to a lot of people.
And have you experienced this yourself?
Yes, I mean, I've been in the IT industry now for nearly 25 years, and I've come across some amazing leaders, right, who have helped me flourish. I've come across some very micromanagers. I've had a good spread of managers, right, or leaders with whom I've really learned a lot, right, and I've also learned a lot what not to do, right, and that's the most important thing. Which has kind of helped me develop, because leadership sometimes for a lot of people is about uh, uh, the naturalness to lead. Some people are born leaders, right? They just got the aura and the gravitas to lead because they got the technical know-how and the managerial know-how to do it. But a lot of people get promoted to a level which is not in their comfort zone, but then the company's ecosystem, the company is flourished, so they feel having a person there for a long time um, is not a good sign, so they kind of end up promoting the person. um, I always feel personally, if there's a very good technical guy, there's got to be a decent conversation had to say, is this something that you want to do? Is this something that you're comfortable? Are you taking away a fish out of the water and expecting it to swim? And that's my view on leadership, right? The more you bring people out of their comfort zone without any coaching, mentoring, giving them the guidance, giving them buddy partners with whom they can talk to, cry on other one's shoulders. These things used to happen a long time back when I progressed and had a progressive career, right? I used to always be given a buddy partner with whom I can speak to, other than my line manager. Because there's sometimes, there's always a stigma attached to what you can speak to your line manager because you got your appraisals and a lot of things associated with it. So I used to always have someone given to me, allotted to me, with whom I can go and have a chit chat, right? What do you think? Brainstorm, understand. But unfortunately, I don't see that happening nowadays because we're all rushing to meet objectives and milestones and so on and so forth. So we're not giving the natural progressive ladder for someone to grow into a leadership role. And that's quite unfortunate at the moment.
I resonate with this. When I started my journey as a first time manager in one of my previous companies, I was at a very young age and I was given responsibilities that needed a lot more maturity. I learned it the hard way. Thankfully, I had right guidance, but I was learning it on the field instead of having some background of learning, some background as to how to lead out there in the field. That would have helped me a lot massively. So that's such a nice thing that you've shared. When it happens that people are pushed onto leadership roles when they are not ready, these people are fired at the end, or these people are kind of like moved around a lot, unless either they learn or they realize that they have to move out. There are certain organizations that I'm aware are doing it right. They have this program where every 2 years the company employee has to find another role within the organization, has to do some projects within the organization so that the person learns other skills also, just not just the core skills. It's mandatory for the person. So people naturally grow. But for people who are not fortunate enough to be in those companies, what do you think can be done? There are some things that you have shared with me. If you can share with the people, that would be wonderful.
I agree with you. I think it depends on the organization and the bandwidth within the organization. But I've had the flexibility and the luxury, you can call it now, right? Where we were asked to get seconded, pick and choose a secondment into a different department to learn um, what actually happens, right? I'll give you an example. I never really appreciated one of the departments that I used to work. I used to always feel, why are these guys lethargic? When we give them a task, they don't do it. And I was talking to this with my boss, and for me to just get a sense of what exactly is happening, of the undercurrent of issues, he said, why don't you just get seconded there for a month, work with them, and then come back. And then I was amazed. The people there were great. The tools were great, but the processes was broken for a long time, and they were understaffed. So they were trying to cater to, as a shared services, bucket amount of work. I looked at their tasks and said, my God. So when I actually worked with them, I understood how undervalued they felt, but they continued to work. And then suddenly my appreciation on them increased massively. So while I
Hmm.
was there for a month, I tried to help drive some processes, improvements that could help them, because they were so busy doing their job, they never had any bandwidth to think out of the box, right? They had no time to even, scratch. That's the worst example I can give you. So they told me, while you're here, we don't want you to do anything except just follow and follow everything that's happening here, and just help us drive some process improvements, right? It kind of helped me out because I was a Green Six Sigma certified practitioner at that point of time. I just completed my certification. So this was like a project for me. It kind of helped me. I'd just done my yellow belt, and then it went on to do my green belt. And so that kind of said, you know what, why don't I use my Six Sigma principles, right? And then we try to improve some processes and then brought some efficiencies in place. But where I'm trying to come across is, those days of you working with your buddies and partners, and essentially getting seconded to another team to understand the undercurrent of issues before pointing fingers. Those luxuries, they, those luxuries don't exist anymore, right? People work in
Hmm.
silos, and and today, when I talk to my people about secondments, they're worried about, the first thing they ask me is, what happens to my existing role if I move into another department? Will my existing role be backfilled? And so there's that fear of what happens to it, and there's a sense of, will I lose my job? Will that role be consumed somewhere else? So I think it comes from top down. The executive layer or your execs in your company will have to drive this for better, to build better leaders. So there's an appreciation of things across your departments.
That's wonderful. What else can leadership do?
It all boils down to the culture that's being developed within your organization, right? How open and transparent. My biggest worry is, I always see that when companies boldly disclose these lot of behaviors, right? Uh, um, do they really mean it? Do they really value it? Is it something that is resonates with the company's organization? Because you go into these large organizations, you see on every desk somewhere there's the values and behaviors put in, and people are expected to follow certain values and behaviors, right? How many of those values and behaviors are actually ground checked every year? Is this values and behaviors still valid for this company?
Hmm.
I used to work for a company for 8 years, and we had not changed the values and behaviors for 8 years, which is quite shocking because the company had moved, right? So we always felt that these values and behaviors don't hold any value, hold any water at the moment. But they continued to stay there for 8 years because nobody bothered changing it. They thought this was working, right? But we had kind of transformed ourselves to a more digital centric organization, but we still had the old values and behaviors that was there, right? So it comes down from top down. When you put something on in people's desks or corridors of, this is our values and this is our behaviors, do you really mean it, right? You need to sense check it, cross check it. Every year there needs to be a cross checking of it. Is it really still the same thing? Has the company moved on from these values and behaviors? Do we need to introduce more, or do we need to reduce the values and behaviors, right? Because what happens is, the company, which I can't name, had around 10 values and behaviors in total, right? And so when someone had to be promoted, they would ask on these 10 values and behaviors, where does the candidate stand? And we used to always find it a bit troublesome because in that year, the candidate was doing a job, and sometimes you do a slightly more than your job. Sometimes you're getting an opportunity to work on a special project. It doesn't happen all the time. So for this guy to tick all the boxes of the values and behaviors was impossible. And we used to get challenged as to why do you think we need to be promoted if this guy has not shown all these values and behaviors? And I used to always argue or counter argue, not just me, my colleagues as well, as to, he was hired for this, and beyond his job he did these four things, and this is the reason why we feel the guy has gone out of his job description to do these things, and this is the reason why he should be promoted, or we think he's got the potential to be promoted. But we used to always get into this loggerhead as to, but yeah, but he hasn't met all these values and behaviors. Can you show us an example that he has done something for this value, for this behavior? And it was impossible. It's almost like some things were created which is impossible to kind of meet, right? So I think we need to think hard as to these things. Why is it you have four of them, right? But then they need to be very clear, mandated, something that can be measurable, something that is practical to be achieved, right, within the framework of the organization, and that comes down from the topics, right, from the execs who really need to drive this for a better culture within the organization.
Also should be time bound because with the advent of AI, everything has changed globally, and things are
Absolutely,
much more
absolutely.
fast.
Absolutely. I think it needs everything needs a sense check. I mean, we were on, old data centers and we moved to the cloud. So does these values and behaviors really mean anything to people now? I think those sense checks have to be done, right, to make it more collectible to individuals who are trying to aspire to move to the next level.
If say a leader is not able to drive these changes, the leader is not in the position. um, I'm talking about middle managers
Yeah.
who take it from top also and who take it from bottom also, or pass it down to bottom line. So how can that person stay sane?
Yeah, I think, see, sometimes what happens is you are in a forced ecosystem, as you rightly said, that you've got things mandated to you as objectives from the top. Now, what I have done is I've been in this sandwiched situation where um, I think I've understood the objectives, but I actually haven't understood the objectives, right? Um, at sometimes I'm expected to create my own objectives, which kind of tallies to the overall objectives. And I should be in a position to be able to explain to my people what these objectives are, because the people under me need to have clear mandate of what are they trying to achieve, what are they trying to, what's a specific goal, how do you measure it, and what's the success criteria for these things, right? So the expectation for a leader is to be able to translate the top level objectives, right? Convert them into your own objectives and make it more measurable and tangible for your own organization. There are going to be times when you have to have the guts to ask the right or difficult questions. And it's easy for someone to sit here and talk about it, but in the ecosystem that you are, it might not help, right? You cannot confront it directly because it's almost trying to confront the person's, authority and leadership. So you will have to find ways. You'll have to find ways to slowly to churn the butter, right? So you got to find you can't churn the butter at speed. You got to do it with slow and steady pace for it to have a meaningful end journey, right? Similarly, you got to chip away from your boss, slowly asking decent questions. Things like, I think I understood these objectives, but I just wanted some clarifications. So your communication strategy is paramount, right? I think I understood this objectives. I just had a few things. I'm trying to dovetail this into the overall objective. So, do you think am I in the right direction? So, I think then your mode of communication is not challenging. You could always go and say, "Listen, boss, I don't understand this objective. I have no clue what this means. What are you trying to achieve?" That's a different tone, right? Your tone in which you converse makes a big difference in how you're communicating top up and bottom down, right? And leaders are only valued when they can communicate well and they've got the technical know-how to communicate, right? That is where a lot of leaders fall down because they just feel when questions are asked, they feel they're almost challenging their authority, right? But that's not the case. You need to just learn how to communicate this well. And once you learn that, I think the relationship slowly develops, saying, you know what, he's asking the right questions. So I need to probably change these objectives or make it a little more meaningful. That kind of, translates into something which is time bound, as you rightly said, to make it more specific, measurable, and something that is can be achievable as well, right? Do you have the right staff to do it, right?
Mm.
So when an objective is thrown at you, right, at that point of time, don't jump and push back. My suggestion is digest it for some time, speak to your team, and look at to meet these objectives. Do we have the right processes? Do we have the right tools? Do we have the right people? I call it the PPT, right? People, process, tools, and find out. Then go back with a constructive argument with your boss, right? Your boss doesn't need you to come back and say this is not possible. He just wants you to say this is possible, provided we've got these things. This is possible, but we currently have a big gap in these areas. This is possible, but we don't have the right tools. So if you can then translate that, break it down into chunks, smaller chunks, and then start working with him and chipping away, right? Then I think you'll end up having meaningful conversations. There'll still be times when the things are still not clear. You can't solve world hunger, but if you can do small things, then at least it stops you from disrupting your current ecosystem with your own team, right? Because otherwise, your team starts losing faith on you because they only look up to you, and you only look up to certain people, right? So I think that's very important factor in how you communicate, right? You should never underestimate. Communication is not having good knowledge of a specific language. It's probably the technique of learning how to get to the bottom of what you want to achieve.
If I had a penny for every time a manager said that I don't understand what the top is saying and I have no idea how to pass it down to the team, I would be rich. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing the PPTs. Definitely, it is going to benefit the people. I would love to know from you about happiness. What does it mean to you? I'm slightly digressing towards
Sure.
a topic of personal nature, but for people who are leading, for them also, it's very important to stay happy and sane.
Yeah, I mean, see, you can get happiness with so many things. I always tell people, other than work, they must have a passion, right? People can have happiness just reading books, sitting quiet, meditation, um, helping others, doing something, having your mind full sometimes, you know, can be so cluttered, coming home and and you've got a lot of chores to be done. You've got to find some happiness. Everyone, I just feel, in just my personal opinion, you've got to have something that you do outside work, right? It could be a small um, offering of seva that you can do, right? It could be the smallest seva that you can do. It doesn't have to be a big scale. Volunteering somewhere to do some small things, in an old age home or, even in your local grocery shop. The fact that you're taking away some time from your core objectives and thinking about something else creates enough of space in your mind, and it doesn't have to be correlated to happiness per se. It just needs to be that you're keeping your mind full with other things so that you're not just cluttered with one thing, right? And you're not always thinking about it. Sometimes, you know, you when you're stressed, I always feel that if you're now thinking about something else, you know what, this evening I have to go to this place to help someone out. Even thinking about it declutters and brings a little bit of sane in your body, right? So I always tell people you need to have something, some passion. And people say, oh, I have no passion, I have no time. I'm sure you have time, right? If you want it, you will make time. It's very simple, right? I mean, if you really need to have an operation, you will make time. You can't just say, oh, I have no time, right? Because it's life threatening. So with mind and happiness, you got to take the time out, right? If you want to make the time, you can make the time. It's 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 not something that you can't. It's you have to make that willful first step, and it's always difficult, right? They say um, the ship when it's docked can never be turned. It's got to make its first step for it to be turned properly, right? So like that, your mind is cluttered. You got to have something, find something, and then the whether it's the definition is happiness or mindfulness or decluttering your mind, you can use different terms for it, but at least it gives you something to look forward to when you have this stressful ecosystem where you're cluttered and you want it to be decluttered as much as possible.
I would love to know more about the word that you use, Seva. This is one of the articles that I had published, and you had commented on it also. Um, See, what I have realized is writing about it, talking about it, and for some people, doing it is amazing. They know it's amazing, and science also proves that helping others actually boosts up your dopamine. But when people are not doing it, there are people who have come to me and said that, yeah, there is no point. Why should I do it for others? What am I getting back? If I'm giving something to somebody else, what am I getting back? What would you like to say to them? Would you share a personal story that has helped you out?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you my own journey on Seva, right? I mean, it started off very small, and I wasn't sure I was doing a Seva. So my kids were playing cricket, and I was a cricket mad guy. And then so I just started helping the existing age group manager, right? And then one day he saw me helping out with the kids and some fielding practice before the match starts and small thing. To me, even that is seva. That selfless service or devotion to the game or a specific activity. And then next thing you know, he said, "Listen, I think you've got the skills to lead this team. Why don't you do it? Because you've got more technical know-how of the game. Why don't you do it?" And then I was like, okay, actually, I'd never thought about it. And then I started getting into it. And then I started managing the team, looking after the people, the logistics, and the thing. And then the best goosebump I got out of this was, which is very surprise stuff, was I had run almost 80 matches in that season selflessly. I had to do a lot of admin, take payments, look after selecting the team, coordinating with the opposition, looking after the pitch, doing a bucket load of stuff that's required for a match day preparation. This is with my day job. And then at the end of the year, we had the ceremony that we do with all the kids as best player, best batsman, best bowler, and everything. And the first time, a lot of parents came to me and they congratulated me on the way this whole thing was done. And they surprisingly, they all pulled in together and got me an amazing gift. And everyone made a speech towards how their child has progressed under my leadership, right? I think one thing led to the other. Then the club then thought, what, I've done all this. Then they said, do you want to go into a formal coaching program run by English Cricket Board? I was like, sure, why not? And then one thing led to the other. I'm suddenly now an ECB level 2 coach, and I've also taken over the chairmanship of the cricket club. Um, so Seva happens in different forms, right? It doesn't have to be in a massive. Uh, it's always usually selflessness that it counts into. But then what it also did for me selfishly is gave me something to think about other than just work. So it's selfishly it helps me as well, but then it's also helping a lot of people in and around, right? Now, for me, the biggest return of investment of a Seva that I do at the moment is seeing kids being progressed, right? Seeing kids being progressed through their county setup. Progressively, they're moving into the next level, right? And they come and say hello, right? An example recently, it happened 4 weeks back where I was walking in the high street and the kid and the parents um, made an effort to cross the street to come and actually say, listen, just wanted to let you know he's just been taken into the county setup. And we can't thank you enough for all the guidance, coaching, mentoring that all you did with him in the winter nets. And, you know, thank you. Just like you take you for a coffee. And I was going somewhere else. I was doing something else. They just forced me to say, let's go and have a coffee. We went and had a coffee. Then they were chit chatting, and it just gave me that good goosebump, good feel factor, right? It doesn't have to be given to you in a manner of money or commodity, right? The fact that they even made an effort because they were on the other side of the street, so they could just walk away, just could have just said hi, bye, and walked away. But the fact that they made an effort to come cross the street and speak to you and then force you for a coffee, you just feel nice about it, right? So mm, I always say people just do some small thing. It doesn't have to be big. It can be the smallest thing that you do. Maybe just helping your neighbor out, an elderly neighbor out, buying groceries for them every now and then, or just going to the medicine store to get medicines, or maybe once a month just take them for a routine checkup. It doesn't have to be massive. It's just these small things, but it keeps your mind occupied to something different. And I think that is an important value bound stuff for Seva. Hopefully, that gives you some insights to my personal journey.
Thank you. I had goosebumps too. So that's such an awe-inspiring story, and I hope the listeners who are listening will also agree that now that Seva sometimes comes back in amazing ways, but even if it doesn't come back, it gives you a boost of dopamine. So you'll have that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So since we're talking about this, there is a lot of buzzword that goes around that's called mindfulness.
Mhm.
What is it for you, and how to unbuzz it and make it actually something personal for people?
You see, there are two things on mindfulness, right? Some people, um, have you ever heard this phrase which just says, an idle's mind is a devil's workshop,
Yeah.
right? So if you have your mind um, empty, can also be a problem. But if you have it over engineered and you have too many things going on in your mind, can also be a problem. Finding the right balance that works for you in correlation with the current work that you're doing, your lifestyle, your family, everything put together. How much can you give? There's always some space for everyone, right? The concept of seva, which I was talking about, it could be the physical, it could be mental, emotional, it could be materialistic seva that you do, but you got to keep that in balance, right? We don't want to have your mind in an imbalanced state where it's over engineered. It's like putting more data than it can take, right, into a database, right? It just doesn't work, right? It's going to fall down. So having the right balance is very important. Mindfulness to me is something that keeps your physical health and your mental health in harmony, right? It's got to be done in conjunction, right? And I'll give you a very example. sometimes, the biggest thing you can do for anger management, right? Because your mind is fully cluttered with things, you just want to spurt something out, right? The best thing is to just take a walk, fresh air, breathe, and then your mind is slightly decluttered to a larger extent, right? Then at least some of the words that you plan to or would have said at that point of a junction will be reduced or minimized to a larger extent. Keeping everything in harmony is what works. You cannot just have a great mindset, but a wrong physical health. They all have to go in balance with each other, right? And I always feel that health is wealth, right? If anything the biggest investment you want to do is you need to spend 10% of your earnings on your health per month. And if you can't do that, there's a fundamental problem in your balancing act, right? It doesn't matter how rich you are or how sane you are in terms of your intellectual capacity, but if you're not physically well, it starts eroding at some stage because your brain is now sending signals to the parts of the body that is not working than actually should work. It's just the simple science. It's not something that we need to dwell too much into. But if you got a pain in the leg, your brain keeps sending signals. So that means the brain that could have been used for something useful is now being sent somewhere else. It's as simple as that. So for me, mindfulness is all about in harmony, in balance, about your both physical health and your mental health. I think if those both are in sync to a larger extent, a man ends up being a lot more balanced, right? When you look at a person, right, it's not about body shaming, but it's when you look at a person, you can make out whether he is in harmony or not, right? And so it's very important. There's no point having a good looking car, but the engine is doesn't work, right? So I always feel you got to be in balance and you got to have the right equilibrium about physical health, mental health, all working in correlation. And it helps a lot with both anger management, communication, right? And also helps try and drive the right narrative to a lot of people.
And how did your journey start with mindfulness? Was it since childhood or something interrupted and happened during the course of life?
I think it was a course of life. I met an individual um, through work, and then just realized he was always happy. He used to always laugh. He used to always tell jokes. He's always thing. He used to be one of those happy, chubby guys, and I used to always think, bloody hell, how the hell is he managing to be so happy, so this one? And only then I realized the guy had so much of issues, right? So he used to put a different persona, right? And then I got curious about it, right? I just did some research, tried to understand, but didn't really understand, how can someone be so happy? And it doesn't mean that someone should not be happy, but he's always, even in the worst situation, I used to remember we used to be on a P1 production call, and we have the execs and everyone on breathing down your neck as to when the problem can be solved, and customers are waiting for a reply and thing. And even in those situations, he used to be one of those happy guys. And then over a period of time, suddenly one day he had not turned up to the office. And then we just realized the guy had a massive mental breakdown, right? And that impacted me a lot because I used to always think, why can't I be like this guy? Why can't I be happy-go-lucky guy? You know, not that I'm grumpy, but there's always phases in your life where you're not happy, but you're grumpy, you're stressed, you look different. And that's my curiousness on mindfulness started, right? And then when I went into the course, when I got a little more deep understanding and I worked with some of the practitioners and I understood how much deep rootedness is there in mental health as well as mindfulness, which we always kind of underestimate, right? Um, we always think this is normal, right? And it not being normal is a normal today, right? People are now slowly opening up. There's a lot of sports athletes and amazing Hollywood and Bollywood actors who are now coming up to talk about these things, because what you see on screen is not what's behind the screen, right? There's a lot of preparation that goes, there's a lot of stress that goes. We don't realize this. I mean, I was listening to one of the articles. The guy had said, I had this role in this movie, but I wasn't sure which role I'm going to get next, right? So he's always stressed for the next role and so on and so forth. And that's when my journey on mindfulness started, right? And then eventually I took on the course, and now I work with some small select set of people, and it gives me a lot of goosebumps because uh, we are not trying to solve world hunger. We're trying to do small things that I take feedback from, and they just go back happy a little more. You're chunking away slowly because it's like unblocking your cholesterol in your arteries. It's not going to happen day one. You've got to do it. It's got to be done over a period of time. But it gives me that good mindfulness to also be mindful about their history, civics, geography, understand their background before I start using techniques or following certain patterns. So the discovery or pre-discovery and spending some time with the individual should not be underestimated, in my view.
Wonderful. So we have talked about your career in IT, about your career as a sports coach, and your career as a mindfulness expert. What else have we missed?
Well, other than a cricket coach, I'm also a cricket umpire. Currently, aspiring to be a national panel umpire. Just been nominated this year to go to the selection process. Whether I'll make it or not, I'm not sure. But umpiring happened by accident, right? I was umpiring a match, and like any individual, everyone thinks they know the laws of cricket. And then I was asked to go and umpire like any club match, just because there was nobody else. And then I made some horrible decisions, right? And so I had the chairman of the club come to me and said, "Son, thanks for volunteering, but you made some really bad decisions. Have you ever thought of just going through the ECB level one umpiring course?" Right? And I was like, "Wow, okay." I thought I was playing the game for a long time, played a lot of gully cricket. So we all watched enough of cricket on TV. So we all think we know the laws. We think we know everything. It's only when I started understanding the nuances, I just stood, oh my God, this is so much behind the scenes, right? There are 42 laws and bylaws, and by the time you can go and master it, write the certification, write the exam, because you could actually be making or breaking someone's career, umpiring, right? And you've got less than a second to make decisions. And that kind of gave me a lot of goosebumps, and it's helped me in my work as well massively, right? There are times when I've had to make decisions not in a second, but I've got to make rapid decisions, right? I'm a lot more uh, stable minded now to make those decisions because that's what I do outside, right? I've got to make that in less than for a fast bowler, it's less than a second. For a spinner, it's maybe a second or two. I've got to make a decision whether he's out or not out, and then I've got to be fully conversant with the laws of cricket because sometimes, you know, certain laws happen suddenly and you'll be brain faded when that happens. And you got to interpret the law and how you go about interpreting that in the scenario that happened. So it fascinated me. And then suddenly one thing led to the other, and I was progressing and I started doing a lot more high level matches. And then suddenly I'm now in the best place um, on the field other than playing. I'm actually watching some amazing game of cricket. standing there, making decisions, working with the colleague. And it helped me with my leadership massively because things like working in a team, making decisions, taking decisions, working within the laws and the framework, right? Collaboration, right? All these are leadership traits that an umpire needs as much as a senior leader leads, right? And I could see there's huge correlation in everything that I did off the field to on the field in terms of man management, leadership qualities. Because when you get onto the field, the players don't care about your looks, they don't care about what you are, how certified you are. All they want is that you're making fair decisions because it could affect their careers, right? So it cumulated to recently I did a match, the under 15 national finals at Lords, right? That was a great day for me because I've never played at Lords. It's a massive thing. And I just the fact that I got to go and umpire there is a massive thing, right? I mean, it's a progressive way of looking at it, and that's how you know I got into umpiring. So that's something that I do massively other than work.
That's so amazing. And what I'm learning is doing things other than work makes you better at work.
Yes, it allows you to spread your wings because there'll always be correlations, right, that you can bring back to work, right? And there'll be a lot of things that you've done at work, you can also bring it offside, right? There is always correlation in life. You just got to find what works for you, right? I mean, this common terminology saying I'm busy, I have no time, is become a big blocker for people to be a little more progressive in their life, right? I understand it might not happen for everyone all the time, but then you have to make time. You will find time, right? There's always enough of idle time in everyone's life, right? That you can spend doing small things. It doesn't have to be massively big things, right? Even if it means that you're walking 5,000 steps, doing for your own self, your physical exercises, right? Just being mentally and emotionally available for your family, your parents, your kids, your wife. Even that is Seva. It doesn't have to be massively for anything big thing. And don't worry about, there's a lot of people someone who told me I have no time because of my lifestyle. So I just do some donation, right? I said, okay, great. That's nothing wrong with it, right? But along with it, I would always suggest people when you're giving that money, do you even go and find out what's happening with it, right? The fact that you're making that effort, physical effort, mental effort, and emotional effort to go there, that itself is an effort, right? So just giving money is one thing, but you need to find out what's happening with it, right? So that means you're involved, and there's a lot more selflessness involvement in the process, and that's what I think people have to spend some time, take some time off to do it. It'll help a lot. It'll give you the fact that you're out of the house, you're doing something new, something different, means that you're not blocked within one ecosystem.
How much is the involvement of your family in Seva and cricket?
I mean, my kids still play, so they help me when I do the winter nets coaching. They come every now and then to set up the cones, set up the nets, set up the things. So at least so that I don't waste time doing all these activities. And then when the thing is finished, the coaching is finished, they help me unpack everything and pack everything back. So that way they do their bits, right? A little bit they do. They help me on small things. I mean, I've always given them activities in and around the house, right? Taking the garbage out. We've institutionalized it in such a way that you know no lunch is free, so that's their pocket money that they get. But at least we've devised it on as a plan that every week one of the kids have got the rights to put both the wet waste, green waste, and the normal recycling waste outside, and then bring it back in. Simple things like that. You can devise small things. And recently, my elder son was interested in, said, Dad, can I get my room repainted? Right. And I said, listen, I've got some holidays to take, so why don't we, and you map it up with your holidays, and we did it together. Right. I think these things help, working with your kids, giving them the ideas. And then he was very interested and he said, I want to do my brother's room, right? The fact that the brother wasn't happy with him doing it, that's a different matter, right? But but it's the fact that, we both sat together, we spend a lot of quality time, went to the shop, looked at what paint he wants, and then how do we scrub it? We just found what is the best roller. Simple things like that meant it was a good 2-day project plan. And then he enjoyed doing it. I was there to coach him, and guide him of what to do, where and how not to paint in the edges. Because the worst part is the edges, right? You got to be very careful with the edges.
Mhm.
And then we found a different technique, and so he started using the ruler in the edges so that it doesn't spill over to the side. Simple things. I mean, he just found his own way, right? And I was just there to help him, guide him, and mentor him, right? So these small things you can do, right? And kids will get involved. I mean, you got to give them small things. I always say don't mollycoddle them. Allow them to go and grow. And you could have seen that years back, me and my brother, we used to just go and play. But today, it's a very virtual world, and everyone wants to play virtual games. No one is playing outside. Obviously the traffic is high. The density of traffic is high, so there's not much place for you to play. But there's still other things that you can do, right? You don't have to be stuck in front of a device, you know. And that's something that parents will have to do something. Don't mollycoddle them. Give them the space to grow as well, massively.
Great. And what would you leave our listeners with in terms of a simple mindfulness exercise, something that they can do every day?
I think one thing I like to do is there's a lot of anxiety amongst people, the fearfulness that goes with everything. Sometimes you get up in the morning. A lot of people have got the habit of listening to the news. There's a lot of, I think 80% of the news is bad news at the moment. Stock markets falling, war happening. I didn't realize there was 60 kinetic wars happening. We only know the Ukraine war, we know the Israel and this war and that war, but there are so many happening in Sudan, here, there, and there are actually nearly 60 kinetic wars, active kinetic wars happening across the world, which I was surprised at.
Big
We
serious.
only know the top 4 or 5, right? So there's bad news across the way, right? Everywhere there is things. So what happens is when you only hear bad news, job losses, this, that, and stock markets falling, you just you just don't feel that it's a good day, right? But that doesn't mean I'm saying don't stop seeing the news, because that's important to understand, right? One mindfulness technique I've always found useful is deep breathing exercise. When you're uh, with let's say you're going to an interview, there's a lot of palpitations, anxiety before you go. I think just sitting in a place and doing deep breathing goes a long way in just clearing your head, right? Being as fresh as possible. It doesn't have to be massive yoga sessions that you need to do or anything. Just follow good breathing technique, right? The fact that you can breathe means you're alive, which means you've got extra oxygen in your body, which means you've got extra oxygen in your head. That means you've cluttered your stuff. At least for those 15, 20 minutes of half an hour of the interview or a maximum 1 hour of the interview, you're now in a little more stable equilibrium to be able to answer certain questions, right? I just feel it doesn't have to be an interview, but as an example, it could be an important meeting that you're going and you're presenting. It could be anything of this nature, right? Or an important meeting that you're physically having with some person. Just spend some time. Just if you go and park your car and you've got 10 minutes before you go and meet him, just do deep breathing. The deep breathing just has massive, massive um, uh, involvement in your body, right? And just helps with extra blood circulation, just clutters your mind, declutters your mind a lot. And I think that I would like to leave with all of them, right? There's a lot of other mindfulness techniques, but for me, deep breathing just goes a long way in removing your anxiety in your body.
Like you said, that is the equilibrium setting that nature has given to us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Vijay. That was Vijay Dwarakanath, my dear friends.